Hey, my name is Ryan Cole. I'm 27 years old and I've just come back to Maple Ridge, a small town in eastern Pennsylvania after 5 years in the military. I didn't return as some kind of hero. There were no parades, no welcome home parties. Just me in an old pickup truck loaded with a few duffel bags pulling up to the house my parents left me. My folks died in a car accident while I was deployed, hit by a drunk driver on a rainy night. I got the news over a crackly phone line in some dusty base overseas. By the time I made it back for the funeral, it was all over. The house has been sitting empty since then, watched over by a neighbor who mowed the lawn every couple of weeks. The place looks smaller than I remember. The white paint on the siding is peeling in spots, especially around the windows, and the front steps sag a little on the left side. The big maple tree in the yard has grown so tall its branches scrape the roof when the wind picks up. I stand on the cracked driveway, keys in hand, staring at it all. Home feels like a foreign word now. For years, I've called barracks and temporary quarters home, places where you crash for a few hours before the next patrol or drill. But nothing stuck. Nothing felt permanent. Maple Ridge hasn't changed much. It's the kind of town where life moves slow. The hum of a lawnmower in the distance, birds chirping from the power lines, a couple of cars rolling by without hurry. The air smells like fresh-cut grass and faint wood smoke from someone's backyard fire pit. That quiet should be comforting, but it unsettles me. I've got too much noise inside my head, the echoes of gunfire, shouts from buddies, the endless hum of engines in the desert. Quiet just amplifies it all. I'm not sure what I'm doing here exactly. I've got some savings from my service, a small veteran stipend, and a lead on a construction job in the next town over. The house needs work. Leaky roof, creaky floors, probably some wiring updates. I figure fixing it up will give me something to do with my hands, keep my mind occupied. But as I unlock the door and step inside, the musty smell of dust and old wood hits me. Sheets cover the furniture and the kitchen counters are bare. It's like walking into a time capsule of my childhood. Faded photos on the walls, the same scratched dining table where we used to eat Sunday dinners. I drop my bags in the living room and sit on the edge of the couch wondering where to start. That's when I notice her. Across the street, on the porch of the blue-shuttered house directly opposite mine, stands Claire Bennett. Back when I was a kid, she was the girl next door, well, across the street, who'd zoom by on her skateboard every summer afternoon. She was 8 years older than me, always seemed so cool and out of reach. I'd watch from my window, too shy to say hi. Now she's a grown woman, mid-30s I'd guess, with a slim build and a steady gaze that cuts through the afternoon haze. Her brown hair is tied back in a simple ponytail and she's wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, nothing flashy. But there's something about the way she stands, confident yet quiet, like she's seen enough of the world to not need to prove anything. She shades her eyes against the sun and looks right at me. Not in a nosy neighbor way, but like she's really seeing me. The duffel bags, the truck, maybe even the weight I'm carrying that doesn't show on the outside. She raises a hand in a casual wave, the same kind she used to give back in the day. Then she turns and heads inside. That simple gesture leaves me standing there a moment longer, feeling a flicker of something I can't name. I shake it off and get to work unpacking. By evening, the house is a little less empty. Groceries in the fridge, bed made up in my old room. I step out onto the porch as the sun dips low, lighting a cigarette and watching the streetlights flicker on. Claire's house is lit up too. Warm, yellow glow from the windows. I wonder if she lives alone, or if life has filled her days with family and routines. The thought lingers, but I push it away. I'm not here for connections. I'm here to rebuild, one nail at a time. A knock on the door pulls me back. When I open it, there she is, Claire, holding a foil-covered tray that smells like garlic and cheese. I figured you might not have had time to stock up on food yet, she says, her voice steady and kind. It's just lasagna, nothing special. I take the tray, the warmth seeping through the foil into my hands. It's heavier than I expect, and for a second my fingers tremble. Not from the weight, but from the unexpected gesture. Thanks. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. She says it simply, no room for argument. Her eyes meet mine, and there's no pity there, just recognition. We stand awkwardly for a beat, then she adds, I remember you, Ryan. The kid who was always tinkering with bikes in the garage. I nod, a half smile tugging at my lips. And you were the one who could skateboard better than any of the boys. She laughed softly, a sound that cuts through the evening quiet. Still can, on a good day. Then her expression shifts, more serious. Welcome back. If you need anything, tools, advice on the house, I'm right across the street. I thank her again and she turns to go. As she crosses the road, tray gone from my hands but the warmth lingering, I realize that's the first real conversation I've had since landing stateside. No questions about where I've been or what I've seen. Just a neighbor being neighborly. But something about it feels like more. A crack in the wall I've built around myself. That night, as I eat the lasagna alone at the kitchen table, the house feels a little less empty. The flavors are rich, comforting, like a memory from before everything changed. I glance out the window at her lit-up home and wonder what her story is now. But for the first time in a long time, the quiet doesn't feel so oppressive. It's just there. And maybe, just maybe, that's a start. The morning after Claire's visit, I woke up at dawn. Old habits from the service die hard. The house was still a mess, boxes half unpacked in the living room. But I needed supplies. I grabbed my keys and headed to the local grocery store, a small mom-and-pop place called Ridge Market that's been there since I was a kid. The bell jingled as I walked in, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow on the aisles. I picked up basics: eggs, bread, coffee grounds, some canned soup, and a few tools from the hardware section at the back: sandpaper, nails, a can of paint sealant for the roof. As I loaded my cart, I ran into a couple of familiar faces. Mrs. Harlan, my old high school English teacher, was at the produce section squeezing tomatoes. She looked up, her glasses slipping down her nose, and did a double take. "Ryan Cole, is that you?" Her voice was warm but laced with that careful tone people use when they're not sure what to say. We chatted briefly, how the town hadn't changed, how she was still teaching juniors. Then came the inevitable. "You doing okay, honey?" She tilted her head, eyes full of sympathy. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, hanging in there." She patted my arm and moved on, but I could feel her glance back as I turned the corner. Then there was Mr. Jenkins from down the block, grabbing a six-pack at the checkout. He clapped me on the shoulder a little too hard. "Welcome back, son. Heard you were overseas. Everything all right?" Again, that question. I mumbled something about settling in and paid for my stuff, escaping to the parking lot with my bags. People meant well, but those okay probes felt like spotlights on the parts of me I wasn't ready to show. I wasn't a hero or a victim, I was just back. When I got home and started unloading the groceries into the creaky old fridge, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Claire standing there with 2 steaming mugs in hand. "I figured you for black, no sugar," she said, handing me one. The aroma hit me, strong, just how I like it. I blinked, surprised. "How do you know?" She shrugged with a small smile. "I remember. You used to drink it that way when you'd hang out in your dad's garage, fixing those bikes." It was a detail from years ago, one I hadn't thought about in forever. We sat on the porch steps, the mugs warming our hands against the crisp morning air. Claire sipped hers slowly, glancing around at the house. "This place could use some love," she said matter-of-factly, not judgmental. "If you need help with painting or fixing things up, just say the word. My schedule's flexible." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no. I've always hated feeling like I needed help, like I was some charity case. But looking at her standing there without pity, just offering like it was no big deal, I couldn't turn it down. "All right," I said. "Could use an extra pair of hands with the roof, it's got a leak." She nodded. "Deal. I'll bring my toolkit tomorrow." Over the next few days, Claire became a fixture in my routine. She'd show up in the mornings with coffee, sometimes black for me, sometimes with a splash of cream for herself. We'd sit on the porch for a bit, talking about nothing and everything. She told me about her job as a therapist, working remotely from home with clients over video calls. "It's rewarding, but draining sometimes," she said one day, staring into her mug. "People carry so much, and you try to help them unpack it." I shared bits about the military, places I'd been, like dusty outposts in the Middle East. But I kept it light, avoiding the heavy stuff. She never pushed. Instead, she'd ask simple things. "Sleep okay last night?" Or "You eat breakfast yet?" Questions that felt safe, like she knew not to dig too deep. We started tackling the house together. She showed up with a ladder and helped me patch the roof before winter hit. She held the flashlight while I crawled under the sink to fix a dripping faucet. In the afternoons, we'd paint the walls in the living room, a fresh coat of off-white to cover the faded yellow. There were stretches of silence while we worked, the kind that didn't feel awkward. Other times, conversation flowed easy. She opened up about leaving Maple Ridge for a few years, living in Philadelphia after college. I thought the city would fix everything, she said, dipping her roller in the paint tray. But it just made me miss the quiet. Came back after, well, things didn't work out. She didn't elaborate, but I caught the shadow in her eyes. Something about a bad marriage, I guessed. I told her about the bases I'd seen, the endless sand, the guys I'd served with, but I steered clear of the nights that still haunted me. On the weekend, we hit the farmer's market downtown. Claire knew everyone, the stall owners, the old-timers selling honey and jams. She introduced me casually. This is Ryan. He's just moved back into his folks' place. No labels like the vet or the one who was away. Just me. We wandered the stalls, her picking out fresh apples and tomatoes, me carrying the bags. She laughed when I bit into a peach too ripe, juice dripping down my chin. You always were a messy eater, she teased, referencing some long-forgotten childhood memory. Back home, we fixed the fence in the backyard. She pointed out where I'd hammered a nail crooked and fixed it herself, her laugh light and genuine. Evenings, I'd sit on the porch watching the sunset. Claire's lights would come on across the street, and I'd feel a pull like the day hadn't ended until I saw her silhouette in the window. She wasn't trying to fix me. She was just there. And in those small ways, coffee, paintbrushes, shared laughs, she was starting to fill the gaps I didn't even know were there. For the first time, the idea of tomorrow didn't loom like a threat. It felt possible. Claire wasn't just helping with the house. She was reminding me that maybe I could be put back together too. It was a Sunday when the rain started. Not a downpour, but that steady, gray drizzle that blankets the town and turns everything soft and muted. Maple Ridge looked like it was wrapped in fog, the streets slick and empty, the trees drooping under the weight of the water. I was inside, trying to lose myself in an old paperback I'd found in one of my parents' boxes. A thriller about spies and secrets that felt too close to home. The words blurred on the page, my mind wandering back to the sand and heat of deployments, the endless waiting for something to happen. I shook it off, focusing on the plot, but then I heard it. A sharp metallic clang from across the street. I glanced out the window. Claire was in her backyard, wrestling with a tarp over her porch. The wind was whipping it around and water sprayed everywhere as she tried to secure it. She looked determined, but frustrated, her hair plastered to her face, clothes clinging from the wet. I didn't think twice. I grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door and jogged across the road, the rain soaking through my shirt in seconds. "Let me help," I called out as I approached. She turned, startled for a moment, then nodded. "Thanks, this thing's fighting back." We grabbed opposite ends of the tarp, pulling it taut against the gusts. Our hands brushed as we tied down the corners, quick, accidental touches that sent a jolt through me. We were close, closer than we'd been before, our breaths mixing with the sound of the rain pattering on the fabric. Her shoulder bumped mine as we secured the last knot, and for a second, neither of us moved back. The air felt charged, like the storm had brought more than just water. Once it was done, Claire stepped under the covered porch, wiping rain from her face. She didn't head inside right away. Instead, she leaned against the railing, staring out at the downpour like it held some secret. Her expression was distant, almost pained. I hung back, not wanting to intrude, but something kept me there. "You okay?" I asked, my voice low over the rain. She gave a small, forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, I just hate the rain." I nodded, shoving my hands into my pockets. "Why's that?" She hesitated, crossing her arms like she was holding herself together. The wind picked up, sending a sheet of water cascading off the roof. "It reminds me of a bad night," she said finally, her words almost lost in the noise. "A really bad one." I didn't push. I've learned that some stories come out when they're ready, not when you pry. But I could see it in her. the way her shoulders tensed, the flicker of old hurt in her eyes. I guessed it had to do with her ex, the one she'd mentioned in passing during our talks. The guy who'd left her feeling like she wasn't enough, who'd walked out and left scars that rain like this probably reopened. "Come inside my place," I said. "I've got coffee, and it's drier over there." She looked at me, weighing it for a moment. Then she nodded. "Okay." We dashed across the street, the rain pelting us harder now. Inside my kitchen, I flipped on the light and started the coffee maker, the familiar gurgle filling the quiet. Claire stood by the table, dripping a little on the linoleum, her arms still crossed. I handed her a towel from the drawer. "Here, dry off." "Thanks." She patted her face and hair, then sat down, wrapping her hands around the mug I poured for her. Black, like always. The steam rose between us as I took the seat across from her. The rain drummed on the windows, a steady rhythm that made the house feel smaller, more intimate. "I don't usually lean on people," she said after a while, staring into her coffee. "I'm used to handling things on my own." I took a sip of mine, the bitterness grounding me. "Me too." She looked up then, her blue eyes meeting mine. There was a vulnerability there I'd only glimpsed before. "But I'm tired of always having to be strong." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew that exhaustion, the constant need to hold it together, to not let the cracks show. In the military, you push through, you don't break. But back here in the quiet, the weight of it all catches up. I set my mug down. I came back here because everywhere else I felt like a ghost, like I was there, but not really. Claire nodded slowly as if she'd expected that. "Ryan, I think you're the only person in this town who looks at me like a real person, not just a role I'm supposed to play." Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. I felt something shift inside me, a wall crumbling just a bit. "Then don't disappear from my life." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing the back of my hand. It was light, tentative, but it lingered. No rush, no demand, just a connection, raw and unspoken. We sat like that for a while, the rain outside fading into background noise. There was no kiss, no dramatic declaration. Just us in that moment, acknowledging something that had been building without words. The boundaries we'd kept, neighbors, helpers, friends, blurred in the steam from our coffee and the patter on the roof. And for the first time since I'd come home, I didn't feel alone in the storm. After that rainy night, things between Claire and me shifted in subtle ways. She still came over in the mornings with coffee, and we'd pick up where we left off on the house repairs, patching drywall, replacing old light fixtures, sanding down the banister on the stairs. But now there were these small moments that lingered longer than before. Her hand would brush mine as she passed me a paintbrush, or I'd catch her watching me while I worked, her eyes soft and thoughtful. One chilly afternoon, as we finished sealing the windows, I noticed her shiver. Without thinking, I shrugged off my jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She didn't pull away. Instead, she tugged it closer, murmuring a quiet thanks that felt heavier than the words. We didn't talk about what happened in the kitchen that night. Not at first. It was like we both knew rushing it would shatter whatever fragile thing was forming. Instead, we fell into a rhythm. Mornings on the porch with steaming mugs, afternoons elbow deep in sawdust and primer. Laughter came easier too. She'd tease me when I measured a board wrong. "Measure twice, cut once, Ryan. Didn't the Army teach you that?" And I'd fire back with a grin, wiping sweat from my brow. In those hours, the house started to transform. Fresh paint on the walls, the creaky floors reinforced, the porch steps leveled out. But it wasn't just the house changing, it was me. Claire's presence made the work feel less like a chore and more like a purpose. The town, though, didn't take long to notice. Maple Ridge is small, too small for anything to stay quiet. It started with glances. We'd be at the hardware store picking up supplies, and the clerk would raise an eyebrow as he rang us up. "You two fixing up the old coal place together?" he'd ask, his tone casual but probing. Claire would smile politely and change the subject, but I could feel the undercurrent. Then came the diner incident. We stopped in for lunch one day after a morning of painting, nothing planned, just hunger hitting us both. As we slid into a booth, the waitress, an older woman named Betty who'd known my family forever, poured our coffees with a knowing smirk. "Oh, well, aren't you two the talk of the town?" she said, setting down the mugs. "Folks are saying you've got quite the partnership going on over there." I nearly choked on my first sip. Claire kept her composure, stirring sugar into her cup. Just helping a neighbor, Betty. You know how it is. But Betty leaned in, whispering loud enough for the booth next to us to hear, "Oh, honey, it's more than that. We've all got eyes." She winked and walked away, leaving us in awkward silence. Outside, as we headed back to my truck, I noticed curtains twitching in a few windows across the street. Subtle, but there. People were watching, whispering. By the time we got home, the weight of it settled in. That evening, Claire knocked on my door earlier than usual. No coffee this time, just her standing there in the fading light, arms crossed like she was bracing for something. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invite. We ended up in the kitchen again, the same table where everything had started to shift. She paced a little, then sat down, her fingers tracing the wood grain. "I don't want to hide, Ryan, but I also don't want this town chewing us up and spitting us out." I leaned against the counter, arms folded. "What do you mean?" She looked up, her eyes steady but vulnerable. "The stares, the comments, they're already starting. People see us together and assume things. And maybe they're right. But if we're doing this, whatever this is, I need to know it's real. Not just because we're both lonely or need a distraction." Her words cut deep, echoing doubts I'd buried. I sat down across from her, searching for the right response. "What do you want from me?" She didn't blink. "I want you to choose. Are you in this because you want me or because I'm here and it's easy? Because you're filling a void after everything you've been through?" The question hung there, raw and unflinching. I thought about the nights I'd woken up sweating from nightmares, the days I'd felt like a stranger in my own skin. Claire had been a light in that darkness, steady, kind, without demands. But was that all? I met her gaze. "I'm lonely, yeah, but choosing you isn't about that. When I'm with you, I don't have to pretend. I don't have to be the guy who came back okay. You see me, the real me, and you don't flinch." She absorbed that, her expression softening just a fraction. "Don't let me be your healing phase, Ryan. I've been that for someone before, and it broke me." I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "I don't want to heal and leave. I want to build something, with you." The air between us thickened, charged like the storm that had brought us here. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm up, lacing her fingers with mine. We sat like that for a long time, the silence speaking what words couldn't. Then, slowly, she leaned forward and I met her halfway. It wasn't a passionate embrace, just a gentle hug, her head resting on my shoulder, my arms around her. But it felt like a promise, quiet and real. From that point, we didn't go public. No hand-holding in town, no announcements. But we stopped hiding from ourselves. I'd cross the street to fix her fence when it sagged after a windstorm, and she'd come over with dinner, staying longer than before. We'd talk late into the night about everything. Her ex who made her doubt herself, my deployments that left scars I couldn't always name. Each time one of us left the other's house, our eyes would lock. A silent acknowledgement that we were crossing lines, building bridges over the gaps in our lives. The rumors buzzed louder, but we let them. What mattered was us, this thing we'd stumbled into, fragile but growing stronger every day. One afternoon toward the end of the month, I was out front replacing the lock on the door, something practical to keep my hands busy, when I heard a car pull up across the street. It was a sleek black sedan, out of place in our quiet neighborhood, with tinted windows and a shine that screamed city money. A man stepped out, mid-30s maybe, dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks, his hair slicked back like he was heading to a board meeting. He walked up Claire's driveway with a confidence that set my teeth on edge. Claire opened the door and I saw her freeze, her body language shifting from relaxed to rigid in an instant. I stayed on my porch, watching but not interfering. Not yet. I didn't want to barge in like some overprotective fool. Claire had made it clear she could handle her own battles. But as they talked, or rather, as he talked at her, I could see the tension. His gestures were animated, insistent, and when he reached out to touch her arm, she pulled back sharply, shaking her head. Her voice carried snippets on the breeze. "No, I don't." He stepped closer, not taking the hint. That's when I crossed the road. My boots hit the pavement steady, not rushing, but deliberate. As I approached, Claire glanced my way, her eyes flashing a mix of relief and something sharper. Anger, maybe, or resolve. The guy, Derek, I assumed from the bits she'd shared about her ex, turned toward me, sizing me up with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything okay here?" I asked, directing it at Claire first, keeping my tone even. She nodded, but her voice was tight. "This is Derek, my ex-husband." Derek's smirk widened, but there was an edge to it now. He looked me over from head to toe, work boots, jeans streaked with paint, the faded army t-shirt. "And you are?" "Ryan, neighbor." I kept it short, my eyes on Claire. She didn't need saving, she needed backup. Derek chuckled, but it sounded forced. "Neighbor, huh? Well, I'm just here to talk. Old time's sake." Claire crossed her arms, her chin lifting. "What do you want, Derek?" He spread his hands like he was the reasonable one. "I was in the area, driving through. Thought I'd stop by, see how you're doing. We had something once, Claire. You can't just shut that out." Her laugh was bitter, short. "I can, actually. And I have. If that's all you can go." He didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer again, his voice dropping to that fake intimate tone. "Come on, let's grab coffee, talk it out. I know things ended rough, but I've changed. I can give you the life you deserve. Stability, everything you wanted." Claire's face hardened. "You gave me one thing, Derek. The feeling that I was never enough. That I was just convenient until something better came along. I'm done with that. If you come back here again, I'll call the cops." The air went thick. Derek's charm cracked, his eyes narrowing. He glanced at me again, like I was the punchline to a joke he didn't find funny. "So, this is it? You and the handyman?" I felt my jaw tighten, but I didn't rise to it. "She asked you to leave," I said, calm but firm. He held my stare for a beat, then backed up a step, hands raised in mock surrender. "Fine, but you'll see, Claire. This little setup won't last." He shot me one last look, got in his car, and drove off, the engine revving louder than necessary. The street went quiet again, just the distant hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the block. Claire stood there, her arms wrapped around herself, shivering slightly. Not from cold, I knew. I stepped closer but didn't touch her. "You okay?" She exhaled shakily, nodding. "Yeah, I hate that he can still make me shake like that." "But you didn't let him win," I said. "You stood your ground." She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce. "Ryan, if you're staying in this, with me, you have to know. The town will talk more now. My past will drag things up. And some days I'll be scared it'll all fall apart." I took her hand then, gently, my thumb brushing her knuckles. "Then I'll be there on those days, the ones where you're scared. I'm not running." She searched my face like she was testing if I meant it. Then she nodded, a small, real one. Not agreement, but acceptance. We stood there on her porch as the sun dipped lower, the shadows stretching across the lawn. No big gestures, no promises etched in stone. Just us, choosing each other in that moment. That night, we sat on my porch steps, the air cooling as stars pricked the sky. The wind rustled through the maple tree, sending a few leaves swirling down. Claire leaned her head on my shoulder, her hand in mine. We didn't say much, didn't need to. Across the street, the lights in her house flickered off one by one, like the day was finally letting go. For the first time since I'd come back, home didn't feel like a place anymore. It was her, the one who didn't turn away when I was at my weakest, who saw the ghosts I carried and stayed anyway. In the quiet, with the town sleeping around us, I realized we'd crossed the last line. And whatever came next, the whispers, the doubts, we'd face it together. Because sometimes coming home isn't about the walls around you. It's about finding someone who makes the broken parts feel whole.